Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. You can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, great. All right, so just looking at Schmidt, these are just the appendices that are in the back of the book. Is it large enough for you? Do you need me to increase it? Is that better?
I think it is.
Okay, great.
Are you able to make it?
Yeah, it's a little too small. If we can get it a little bigger.
Is that better?
That's a lot better.
Okay. And can you see the whole thing, or did it go off the screen?
I could see the whole thing.
Okay,
That
awesome.
looks good
All
right
right,
there.
great.
Well, that's too much now.
Too big?
Yeah, it's too big now.
Okay. How is that? Is that okay?
No, a little bit more.
Little bigger or smaller?
Smaller.
Smaller?
There, right there.
Okay, all right, awesome. All right, so starting with a review of the verb tenses. So verb tense shows time. And this is kind of a nice chart that can just clearly show you all the different verb tenses. So in general, you have 3 verb tenses, which are present, past, and future. And then we have different aspects, and the aspects are across the top. So we have a simple aspect, which is usually something that is just done once and it's over, or it's a routine. Progressive is something that is continuous. And a perfect tense is usually something that has been completed in the present moment. Maybe it started in the past and it was completed recently or in the past. Then the perfect progressive has some kind of a continuous notion to it. So it occurred over a duration of a period of time. And perfect means that it has been completed. So another word for progressive is continuous. They can be used interchangeably. So you can have the present progressive or present continuous. It means the same thing. You can have past progressive or past continuous, and it means the same thing. The verb tenses are composed of different forms of the verb. So if you take I eat in the simple present, that's the subject. Well, these all have the same subject here, but let's just focus on the verb. So the verb is in what form? Does somebody know what we call that form of the verb? In the present tense? It's just the simple present, right? And in English, to make the simple present, it's the same as the infinitive. Infinitive has to before it, right? So the infinitive would be the verb to eat. In English, it has 2 parts to it. And simple present is the same as the infinitive without the to. We call that the base form. So we use the base form of the verb in order to make the simple present tense in English. Then in simple past, is this verb a regular verb or irregular verb?
Irregular?
Yeah, it's irregular because we changed the root of the word. Remember last week when we talked about morphology? And this is the root morpheme, and it changes itself. We don't add another morpheme to make it in the past, which we do with the regular verbs. So with regular verbs, we add the morpheme ed at the end to make it past. Irregular verbs, we just change the root morpheme. This is a simple future created with the, what do you call the verb will in this situation? What kind of a verb is that? Right, it's an auxiliary verb, or a helping verb. So auxiliary verbs, that's their role, is to help. They help the main verb. So they usually don't have meaning in and of themselves, but they kind of color the meaning of the main verb. So this gives it the future tense or future meaning by using this auxiliary verb. So we add it before the main verb. We can also form future with going to, and we'll see that later in a different chapter. But the difference between going to and will, there is some slight difference in meaning and where you use them, but that's another way to form the future. So with it, can somebody describe how we form the progressive tense then? What do we use to make present progressive?
Also, Professor, I think there's someone waiting to join.
Oh,
I
is
think
there?
that they accept them.
Oh, okay. I have to stop my share to do that. Thank you for noticing that. Appreciate it. Hello. Okay.
What did she say? Oh, present progressive. You're in it. You're in it.
Yeah, I think I get in here.
Oh, okay, he's in now.
Okay. Yeah, I got him in. Okay. Thank you.
Really?
Hi, Gary.
Oh, I got you.
Thanks for joining us.
Shoot.
Are we good? Are you guys in the same room?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Did you guys go to class anyway?
Yeah, because we had our meeting.
No, we wanted to be here.
Awesome. Okay. Good deal.
We wanted to be here.
Okay. Good. Good. So did I. All right. So who can explain how we form the progressive tense?
Present progressive?
Present progressive.
I forget which one she said.
Can you say present progressive or past progressive?
Let's start with present.
That could be to be plus verb equal.
Plus what?
In the structure of present progressive.
Okay. So this is
And ing.
Hmm?
yeah.
You want to turn off? You want to turn off?
So for those of you guys who are in the same classroom, if maybe you can keep your audio muted and just use one. Are you all on different devices? Maybe you want to hover around one device so that we don't get interference, or just be sure and mute yourself if you're not speaking, but you'll tend to get feedback in this room.
Okay, sorry. He didn't know how to work it, but we're good now.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. So somebody said we use the verb to be plus the progressive. So you need to be very careful because progressive is the verb tense. That's the verb to be, but plus the verb in the ing form. So be careful that you don't call the verb in the ing form the progressive, because the progressive refers to both verbs together. And what do you call it when you have more than one verb working together? Do you know the word for that?
Is that like a verbal phrase?
Exactly. Yes, a verb phrase. So a verb phrase means that you have more than one verb working together as the verb of the sentence. So technically we have one verb in this, well, we have two verbs in the sentence, but they're working together as one verb phrase to form the progressive tense. So we use the present tense of the verb be plus the main verb in the ing form. And how can we describe the past progressive? How do we form that then?
A past tense verb be plus ing.
Awesome. Plus the main verb with ing, right? Okay, you got the idea. Then can somebody explain how do we form the present perfect tense?
Is it has and a have, and then you use the past tense of the verb?
Okay.
I think that's what have past participle.
Yes, very good. Awesome. So it's have or it's a form of have, right? So it's for present tense, it's have or has because the conjugation depends on the person, right? In third person singular, we use has. And then the main verb is in the past participle. So be careful because it's not the past, it's the past participle. What's the difference between the past tense and the past participle?
Past participle doesn't change when it's conjugated with all of the subject pronouns, so it's always eaten in this case.
Okay. Could we say that about the simple past as well?
No, the simple past change.
Can you give me an example?
So it's ate and eaten. This is the difference. I was or been. This is been. So this is the difference between the past participle and the simple past.
Okay, so ate, you said the difference is that the participle doesn't change, but the past tense might change, right? So like in the example you gave with ate, does ate change depending on which person it's conjugated with?
I don't think so, no.
Right, I ate, you ate, he ate, we ate, they ate, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's the same.
So it's the same for everybody, except for there's one verb, there's an exception. In the simple past, it does change. There's one verb. Can anybody think which one that is? Where it's different for one person as opposed to another?
Can you repeat the question?
She was saying that the simple past changes per person in the conjugation, but then now we've decided that that's not so. That's not true. It's the same for everybody. I ate, you ate, he ate, they ate, we ate, right? It's the same down the line. However, what she said is true about one verb. There's one verb in the simple past that does change depending on who the verb. There you go. The verb.
I do remember that. That's why I stated this. I do remember the to be you like where and was.
I was. You were, right? So yes, good job. Okay, so in general, the verbs are the same all the way down the line in English in the simple past, and also in the past participle. So that's not a good distinction. What's a good distinction? Can somebody help with that? What's the difference between simple past and past participle?
One needs the helping verb.
True. The past participle, when it's in a verb phrase, it always has a helping verb. That's true. Good point. So, you know, when you memorize the verbs in English, when you say, like, for example, eat, ate, eaten, buy, bought, bought. Say, what's the simple past?
Said.
Said. And the past participle?
Said as well.
Said as well. Sometimes it's the same and sometimes it's different, like we saw with eat. It can be different. So the past participle is that third column when you memorize the verb conjugations in English. And the simple past is the second column. So true, the past participle requires a helping verb when you use it as a verb tense. We'll see later that we can use these participles as adjectives as well. In that case, of course, it doesn't require a helping verb because it's being used as an adjective, not as a verb. So how do we have eaten, or present perfect, we form by the present tense of the verb have plus the past participle. Past perfect, we form by the
Had plus the past participle.
okay. So the
Plus no, not the main verb, the past participle.
and how do you describe have?
Had is the past tense of have and has.
Perfect. So the past tense of have plus the past participle of the main verb. Great. And then future is will plus what?
Plus the main verb, the simple future or the perfect future?
Just the simple future right now.
It's will plus the main verb.
Is there something else? What's the main verb here in this example? I will have eaten. What's the main verb?
The future perfect. So have will plus have plus the past participle.
So will plus have, which is the base form of the verb have, plus the past participle. Okay. And then looking at the progressive, we can say the same thing going down the, we can say the same thing going down the line, except for we're going to add what? Sorry about that. Okay. So for the past, for the perfect progressive, how do we form that? Like the present perfect progressive. What do we need in all of the perfect progressive tenses? What do we need to add?
ing.
True. And what?
Been.
Exactly. So you have the same as the perfect, but for perfect progressive, we need the verb be in the which form? What is been? How do we describe that?
The past participle or verb to be.
Awesome. Plus the main verb in the
Plus the main verb in the present progressive. So eat plus ing.
So be careful. Can we say the main verb in the present progressive? Is that true? Is that the correct terminology to use? Because remember the progressive, that word progressive defines the whole verb tense. So what we're talking about now is how you form that verb tense. We form the present progressive, the present perfect progressive by have plus the present participle or the past participle of the verb to be plus the main verb in the
Progressive.
No, we can't call it progressive because progressive is the whole thing. It's the whole verb phrase. So you can't say that the verb is in the progressive form. You have to say the verb is in the ing form. You can't call that verb in the progressive form. Progressive refers to the verb tense, not the form of the verb. Is that clear?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Professor. There's another student waiting to.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I don't see that when I'm sharing my screen. Awesome. Hello. Darn it. There we go. Okay, so just to reiterate one more time to make this super clear, because this is very important. Remember last class when I was saying how vocabulary and terminology is so important, and that's why I asked you to take the vocabulary quiz at the very first week of the course, because the words that we use need to be precise so that we know exactly what we're talking about and what we're explaining. Because the word that I use, you need to have the same idea in your head as I have in my head. And if I use one word and you have a different idea in your head, that's where we have miscommunication. So to reiterate, to make this super clear, progressive is a verb tense. The verb tense is usually formed by a verb phrase. It's usually more than one verb. Only the simple past and simple present don't require auxiliary verbs. All of the other verb tenses require auxiliary verbs. So to create the verb tense, we need to put several different verbs together in the verb phrase to create that verb tense. So when we describe the present perfect progressive, we have to say it is formed, this verb tense is formed by the verb have in the present tense, plus the verb to be in the participle, plus the main verb in the ing form. You have to say it's main verb plus ing. You can't say main verb in the progressive, because progressive is the verb tense as a whole, including the whole verb phrase, not that one verb. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm gonna make this, oh, I know what I can do. Is that a good size for you? I'm gonna look at this on my computer because I'm showing you this on my phone, and that's why I keep changing the size so I can see it properly. Can you see this? Is the screen a good size for you?
Yes, but it's cut
Is it
off
cut
some
off?
part.
Okay.
Cannot
Is that
see all that.
is that better?
No,
Still too big.
No? Can you see it all?
could you move
Or not?
on to the left a little bit? It's still cut a little bit on the right.
Okay. You can always increase it on your own screen. I was trying to make it bigger so that it was clearer for you. So I'm just
Yes.
going to keep it regular size. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, that looks perfect.
Okay. Okay, great. So you can always increase the font, I mean, like the magnification on your own screen if you want it bigger. All right, so then looking at verbs. So there are different kinds of verbs. We have verbs that show, like, usually verbs we think of as action words, right? And particularly when we teach grammar to children, we usually say verbs are action words. But with older learners or more advanced learners, we need to be a little bit more precise, because verbs can do other things as well. As we just saw, verbs can also be auxiliary verbs. They can be helping verbs. In which case, do those verbs show action? Does will, does been, do those show action?
They show a state.
What? They show states. Very good. Okay. So the verb to be generally shows a state. It doesn't show an action. So you have several different kinds of verbs that can show states. We talked about a verb phrase. So in this book, they say, Schmidt says, that you can consider one verb as a verb phrase. In general, I disagree with that terminology. And she's the only author I've seen who says that. Most authors say that a phrase is more than one verb. But she's just, there's somebody with a little background noise. Can you put yourself on mute, please? So she says that one verb can be considered a verb phrase. But most authors say you need more than one verb. But she's saying if you only have one, you can still call it a phrase. But I kind of disagree with that terminology. Then we have linking verbs. So a linking verb will connect the subject with whatever comes after it. Can anybody give an example for that?
For a verb phrase?
Does it describe somebody's actions, I guess, in a little bit more detail, like he wore a blue shirt today, the word wore?
Oh, okay. So in the example that she gave, he wore a blue shirt. In that case, what kind of verb would wore be? Would it show action or state, or would it be linking? Let me put it this way. Linking verbs do not take an object. And in this case, do we have an object? He wore a blue shirt.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
A blue shirt.
Yeah, he wore something, right? So the object of what he did was the shirt, right? How about I am hungry? So we have, where's the verb in that sentence? I am hungry.
Verb to be am.
Am.
There you go. The verb to be, in that case, it's am. The conjugation is am. So what that verb does is it links the subject. What's the subject in the sentence?
I.
Okay. To the other word, hungry. What kind of word is hungry?
Adjective.
Awesome. It's an adjective. So the adjective, what does it describe? Does it describe am?
I.
It describes I. Perfect. So am is a linking verb in this case. What it does is it connects the adjective to the subject. So that's a linking verb. How about she feels sad? What's the verb?
Feel.
Feel.
There you go. What's the subject?
She.
And what kind of word is sad?
Adjective.
Adjective.
There you go. Okay, so that's another example of a linking verb where it connects the subject to an adjective in the predicate. And then finally, active verbs. A statement about an action where the subject is the doer and the object is the receiver. That's not different from action above, where I said that verbs can show actions or states. So you could also have verbs in the passive form, which we'll see a little bit later. So generally they show, if it shows action, it's active. Okay, so looking at simple present, so there are rules for when these different verb tenses are used. And in general, we use simple present to show general truths. Can somebody give an example of a simple present sentence showing a general truth? Something that's true in general?
The sun go around the earth.
Perfect. The sun goes around the earth. That satisfies both criteria. It's a general truth and it's also a scientific fact. It happens on a regular basis. It's something that we know. It's routine. So we use simple present. Can somebody give an example of a custom or a habit?
I often get up at 6.
Okay, I often get up at 6. So what kind of word is often?
Often is a frequently adverb.
Awesome. It's a frequency adverb. Perfect. So we usually use simple present with these frequency adverbs because they show routine. So when you have this customs or habits, that's a routine. How can we use simple present for a scheduled event in the future? Can somebody give an example of that?
Like the bus leaves at 7.
Perfect. The bus leaves at 7. Right now it's 5, but the bus leaves at 7. It's a routine, right? So it's scheduled in the future, but it's also kind of routine. And generalizations, you know, in general. So progressive tense, we talked about that. There's a very, very nice grammar book that's called, oh, what's the name? It's by Raymond Murphy. Has anybody used that book? I can't think of the title of it right now. Grammar in Use. Do you know that textbook? There are many different versions of it. There's a black one, a blue one. Have you ever had experience with that book? Is that the right author? No. It's a different book I'm thinking of. There's another one by Betty Azar, A-Z-A-R. Her first name is Betty, B-E-T-T-Y. She has a very, very nice grammar book for teaching ESL or EFL. And she has some really nice charts that show the verb tenses. I'll bring one in for you next class so that you can see how they look. But it's a very nice graphic representation of verb tenses. So she would show the present progressive, and I'll show you how she does that later. But progressive shows something that's continuing. It has some duration to it. So usually it started sometime in the past and continues on into the future or the near future. So something that's going on for a certain duration of time. So the future tenses, so the auxiliary verb will can show these different kinds of feelings. It can show a future event. It can show willingness, like offering to do something, or it can even show certainty, like when you're very adamant about something, yes, that will certainly happen. And predictions about events. And then future progressive, so we talked about some of the other progressive tenses. With future progressive, we use will plus not plus the verb to be, and then the verb in the ing form. So these are things that occur continuously in the future, and they usually start now and go on into the future or at a specific time in the future. So you've had plenty of exercises with these to look at. Let's see, we spent a lot of time on that first slide, but it's super important to be able to understand the terminology and use it correctly. Can anybody define a clause? What is a clause in general?
What?
A clause, what's a clause?
Is it something that doesn't have both a subject and a predicate?
What does anybody else think? Do you agree with that? She said it doesn't have a subject and the predicate.
Can it be just a group of words? I felt like it's just a group of Yeah, just a constituents, or I felt like I remember reading something about that. The word constituents and like a group of words, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a subject or a verb, because then you will break clauses into whether it's independent or subordinate.
Okay.
Clauses have a subject and a verb.
There you go. Okay. So that's kind of the definition of a clause, is that it must have a subject and a verb. So that's what comprises a clause, is that it has a subject and a verb. What's the difference between an independent clause and a dependent clause? There's one main difference.
The independent clause cannot come, the dependent clause cannot come by itself, like, but I wanted to eat. So the meaning is not complete. It needs another clause, another sentence to make the sentence complete.
Okay, a dependent clause, it's dependent upon something else to make the meaning complete. It's not complete on its own. You gave the example, but I want to eat. That's not a dependent clause. The word but is not a subordinator, but if we change that to because I want to eat, can you see how that's an incomplete idea? Because of what? Because I'm hungry, because this food smells so good. There's some reason. So I want to eat is complete, right? So that's what we call an independent clause. Independent because the meaning, it has meaning on its own. It doesn't need anything else to complete it. A dependent clause needs something else to complete the meaning. So we'll get a lot of experience with that. We'll get a lot of practice with those. Okay, so looking at present perfect, there's a, yeah, sure. Did you have a question?
Yeah, can you repeat what the definition for a clause was?
You're right. Clause means it's a subject plus a verb.
Okay,
Basically.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so independent clauses are subject plus verb and complete meaning. Dependent clauses are subject plus verb and incomplete meaning.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so present perfect is kind of an interesting verb tense. I like this one. It has a lot of different uses. So it can describe things that are unfinished. It doesn't always mean that they're finished. Sometimes people have the misconception that present perfect means that it's done, and that's not necessarily so. It has this sensation of something that started in the past and comes up to the present, and it might have been completed in the past. So it has some kind of a past plus present type of notion to it. So like, for example, I have lost my keys. When did that occur? When were the keys lost?
Not sure.
Not sure. But has it been done? Was it a completed action?
No, not yet. We lost the key in the part, and now you still haven't not found it yet.
Okay, so I did lose them. That was completed, right? In that they were lost and they're gone. Now I don't know where they are. So it happened sometime in the past. I don't know when, but it shows this relationship of the past to the present, where I lost them sometime. I don't know when, but the problem is now I can't get into my apartment because I can't find my keys. So there's some kind of implication that there's a current situation as a result of that. How about, like, what's the difference in meaning between I cleaned my room and I have cleaned my room? There's a very slight difference in meaning.
The simple past action is done in the past, so it's already done. the present perfect could continue to the present. So the action began in the past, and still goes to till the present.
So in this example, I have cleaned my room. Am I still cleaning?
Or maybe I do remember that present perfect could happen in a not specific time in the past as well. Maybe.
Right. So I'm asking, what's the difference between I cleaned my room and I have cleaned my room? Are either of those specific as to when it occurred? Do you know when I cleaned my room in either of those sentences?
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't know. So that's not the difference. What's the difference in the meaning between the two? There's just a very slight like feeling of a difference. It's not obvious. It's just, can you feel it?
I clean my room. It feel like it done in the part. But I have cleaned my room. It's like it happens. I'm not so sure.
So think of the example I gave before with I have lost my keys. What did I say about that? It happened sometime in the past. We don't know when, but there's some implication for the present, right? Now I can't get into my room. And what about I have cleaned my room? What's the implication? Now it's clean. Before it wasn't, and now it's clean. So it's emphasizing the transition, the change. I cleaned my room is a statement. It's done. It's a fact. I cleaned it sometime. I don't know when. But if I say I have cleaned my room, I'm emphasizing the fact that now it's clean. It was dirty, but look at the transformation. Now it's different in the present. Can you feel that difference?
Okay, I think I'm understanding what you're saying. So just an example would be, I had cleaned, if I was talking to, maybe a child was talking to a parent, I had cleaned my room yesterday, but if they're on the phone with them right then and there, mom could say, did you clean your room? Yes, I have cleaned my room. Like, I just did it within an hour or so, or is that kind of how it makes?
No, it doesn't have to do with when. The when in both situations, we don't know. So just using the example that I gave, because you're adding another verb tense when you say I had cleaned my room. What verb tense is that? So you gave the example, I had cleaned my room. What's that?
I think when you say I had cleaned my room, that cleaning had just happened, but not sure when. It's just happened recently. But when you say I cleaned my room, it's like happened in the past, and I think it's a little same but a little different. I don't know how to explain it.
Okay, let me reiterate. So we have two sentences. One, I cleaned my room. The other, I have cleaned my room. I cleaned my room is what verb tense?
It's regular past tense.
What do we call that regular past?
Simple past.
Simple past. I cleaned my room is simple past. I have cleaned my room. What verb tense is that? And when? What?
Is it present perfect?
Present perfect. Very good. Made with the verb have plus the verb in the what form?
Participle.
Past participle. Excellent. So I cleaned my room and I have cleaned my room. Do we know when I cleaned my room? In both of those sentences, do we know when it occurred?
No.
No.
We do not. So it has nothing to do with when. That's not the answer. The way that they are different, I cleaned my room. It happened sometime in the past. I'm just explaining what has been done. It's a statement of fact. I have cleaned my room, present perfect. The emphasis is on now. The emphasis is showing that there has been a change or a transformation. Now it's clean. Before it was dirty, and now it's not. Look, I have cut my hair. Now it's different. Before it was long, now it's short. Do you see? I have eaten all my food. Look, Mom, I cleaned my plate. It's just a very slight difference. It's a difference in emphasis. Yes, I ate lunch. Okay, my food I ate. Yes, I ate. Oh, I have eaten my lunch. Now I'm full.
Okay.
You get it?
Got it.
Woohoo!
Can you
Okay.
accept the classroom, Professor?
Can I accept what?
Another login.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Hello. What is this? Oh, wait. Yikes. Just a sec. Here we go. Okie dokie. All right. So then, one other question just to test you all. So, I think it was Naomi gave she was giving examples, and she said, I had cleaned my room. What verb tense is that? This is an extra credit quiz question. I had. What is it?
Did you say I had or I have?
Had, H-A-D.
Past perfect.
Perfect. So past perfect is usually used when?
When two actions happen in a part and which action happened first, then that will be taken with the past perfect.
Perfect. So you have more than one action in the past, and you want to show which action happened first. So I had cleaned my room before my mother got home. So there were two events that occurred in the past, and one happened before the other. Very good. All right. So let's move on here a little bit. Past progressive is something that continued for a certain duration in the past. Simple past, I'm sure you're pretty clear on that, on how it's something that was over and done with in the simple past. And past progressive or past continuous, there was some duration to it. And then, so past perfect is the one that we just talked about. And then you can have past perfect progressive, something that happened for a duration of time in the past up until the present. So a lot of verb tenses, and it's a lot to wrap your head around, I understand, but this is kind of like a general overview, and we'll get lots of practice with it. So don't stress out about it too much. This is kind of like just getting your toes wet and just jumping into it, getting started. So obviously you have the different time frames. Present is present, past and future and past different for the different time frames. So let's take a moment and look at passive verbs. So if we have the example of I cleaned my room, is that an active sentence or a passive sentence?
Active.
Active. Who did the action?
I, the subject.
I, the subject in that sentence. Great. How can we transform that sentence into passive?
Too tiny.
The room was cleaned by me.
Perfect. The room was cleaned by me. So the room is what? I cleaned. What kind of verb is clean? So when we have action verbs, we usually have two kinds of action verbs. They can either be transitive or intransitive. What's a transitive verb?
It passes the action to the object.
Perfect. You got it. So there's an object that receives the action from the verb. So I cleaned my room. It's a transitive verb. What's the object? What received the action of my cleaning?
Room.
The room. Awesome. Perfect. So the room is what? What's the part of speech?
With objective.
Yes, it's the object. It received the action of the verb. It's the object. So in order to create the passive, what do? Somebody said, the room was cleaned by me. So the room was the object, right? And now in the passive sentence, the room becomes what?
The subject?
Yes, very good. It becomes the subject of the sentence. How do we know that? How can you be sure? How do you find the subject of a sentence? How do you know which word is the subject? So if we go back to our active sentence, I cleaned the room, what's the subject?
I.
Perfect. And we said the verb was cleaned. The easiest way in the world to find the subject of the sentence in English, what did we say was the typical pattern in English? Do you remember last time we talked about the universal grammar? And we said that Chomsky said that every language has a certain pattern. And I said in English, we follow a certain pattern. Most of the sentences are formed in a certain sequence. But what's the sequence? Does anybody remember?
Subject, verb, object.
The subject, predicate.
Perfect, yes. Subject, verb, object, or subject, predicate. The predicate is comprised of the verb and the object. Perfect. So usually in English, we have an SVO pattern, subject, verb, object. So if we can identify the verb, we can very easily identify the subject, because where is it?
Before the verb.
Perfect. Awesome. So if we don't know anything about syntax, but we know cleaned is the verb, I cleaned the room, how can we identify the subject? Where's the subject?
Before the verb.
Mm-hmm. So therefore the subject in that sentence is? In I cleaned the room, the subject is?
I.
Hi. And we said, and then to make the passive, we took the object and now we made the sentence, the room was cleaned by me. What's the verb in that sentence?
Clean.
Was clean.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. What do we call that when we've got two verbs together?
Phrasal verb.
Is that right?
Phrase verb. Verb phrase.
There you go. You got it. Very good. Very good. So it's a verb phrase. Be careful because that's different than a phrasal verb. What's a phrasal verb? We talked about that a little bit last class. Do you remember? Something like get up, get off, get out. Those are phrasal verbs. How do we make phrasal verbs? What is that? Get up, get off, get out. What are those? It's a verb plus a
Preposition.
perfect. Very good. Verb plus preposition. And when usually it or not usually, but most, well, yeah, usually it changes the meaning. So not always. Like shut up. Shut means close. Up is up. But shut up together means what?
Quiet.
Be quiet. It has a different meaning, right? It doesn't mean shut. Maybe it means shut your mouth, but I mean, technically it means be quiet. So get up. I get up at 6 a.m. What does get up mean? What's it equivalent to?
Rise or awaken.
Nice, perfect, beautiful. So it usually changes the meaning. Not always, but it usually does. So a phrasal verb is a verb plus a preposition, and frequently it's like an idiomatic expression. That means it has a different meaning. But in this example here, the room was cleaned by me. What's the verb in the sentence?
Was cleaned.
Okay, and what do we call that when we have two verbs together?
Verb phrase.
Perfect. Verb phrase. So it's two or more verbs together working as the verb in the sentence. So it was cleaned. So I cleaned my room. What verb tense is that?
Simple past.
Simple past. So to make it, when we changed the sentence into the passive, we took the object, the room, and we made it, we put it in the front of the sentence. So was cleaned, we said was the verb. So therefore, what's the subject of that sentence now?
The room.
The room, because it's on the left of the verb, right? If it's on the left of the verb, it's the subject in English. So the room now becomes the subject. You take the object and you put it in subject position. So the room was cleaned by me. Now, what did we do with the verb? In the active sentence, I cleaned, we just had the verb in the simple past. Now to form the passive, what did we have to add? I cleaned versus the room was cleaned. What did we add to the verb or the verb phrase?
An auxiliary verb.
Okay, yeah, we added the verb to be in the simple past, right? And that's how we have to add to make passive voice. We always need to add the verb to be. And it might be in a different verb tense depending on what tense the sentence is in. So you see all the examples here. You can have passive tense in all the verb tenses. So you can take active and make it passive. So here's a bonus question for you. I cleaned my room. Cleaned was what tense of the verb?
Simple past.
Simple past. In the passive tense, the room was cleaned by me. We said the verb phrase was cleaned. What is cleaned? How do you describe that?
Is a past participle.
Woohoo! Perfect. Very good. So that's a trick question. Why? Why was that potentially difficult to answer? Looks the same, doesn't it? Cleaned and cleaned. How did you know it was the past participle?
Because it comes after the auxiliary was or verb to be.
Okay, that's how we make the passive tense, is we use the auxiliary, the verb to be, and then the verb in the past participle. Right? So we had to put it in the past participle. It wouldn't be simple past. You would never use two verbs to make simple past in English. You don't say was cleaned. The second verb has to be this past participle. Simple past in English is just one verb. It's not a verb phrase. So therefore we know that it's the past participle. So when we talked about was, were, been, eat, ate, eaten, and I said past participle was that third column, all of those examples were with irregular verbs. With regular verbs, the past participle is the same as the
Past tense.
Yeah, it's the exact same. You add ed. So it might be confusing, right? Just looking at it. So you have to know the form. How do we make that verb tense for you to know that that's past participle and not simple past? Because it could be tricky. In the regular verbs, they look exactly the same. So it's hard to identify. Great job. Okay, very good. So, couple of things to be careful of with passive voice here. So we talked about transitive verbs, and transitive verbs usually have an object after them. Intransitive verbs don't. So if it doesn't have an object, we can't make it passive. Because in order to make it passive, you must take the object and move it to subject position. If you have no object, you have nothing to put in the subject, so therefore you can't make a passive. So that's important to think of. The same thing applies to linking verbs. Remember the example, I feel sad? There's no object with a linking verb. It just connects the subject to an adjective. So there's nothing to take and put it in subject position. Same thing with have and get. I have the measles. You can't take measles and put it in the subject form, subject position. You can't say measles were had by me. That would be silly. It wouldn't make sense. When I said the sentence, the room was cleaned by me, this by phrase becomes optional. You don't need to include it. So we could just say the room was cleaned, right? It makes perfect sense. Is that a clause? The room was clean? What's our rule for a clause? What's the definition?
It has a subject and a verb.
Okay. Do we have a subject and a verb? The room was cleaned?
Yes.
Okay. What's the verb?
Was.
Do we have more than one?
Was cleaned by me. Was cleaned.
Very good. Lovely. So we have a verb phrase in this sentence, right? We have two verbs. And therefore, where is the subject? To the left of the verb, what is it?
The room.
The room. The room is the subject of the sentence. So is that a clause? Do we have a subject and a verb?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. So it's a clause. So a sentence can be a clause. Is a sentence an independent, is this sentence an independent clause or a dependent clause? Dependent is the same as subordinate. They're interchangeable. The room was cleaned. Is it a complete idea?
Yes, maybe. Yes, we can say the room was cleaned. But unless if you want to add by someone.
Okay, we can add by someone if we want to, but we don't have to.
Yeah. No.
Right? So without it, is it a complete idea? The room was cleaned?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. So therefore it's a clause, and this clause is an independent clause because it has complete meaning, right? So you can choose as to whether you add the, why would we use the by phrase? The room was cleaned by me. When do we use passive voice? Like, what's the main use for it? Why do we want to go through all this work of taking the object and putting it in the subject position and adding a form of the verb to be? In which situations do we want to use that construction? What do we want to emphasize?
Maybe on the action?
Okay. And also maybe on the result too. But do we want to emphasize who did it?
More on
Not
what
at all.
was done.
Exactly. More on what was done. It's very typical in scientific language, like the research was conducted, the book was published, the experiment was conducted, the research team presented, or the results were presented, because who did it is not so important. What's really important is the result. So that's why we take the object, and by putting it in subject position, by putting it at the front, we make it more prominent. We make it more important. So the agent, the person who did the action, might even be irrelevant. It doesn't matter who did it, but we want to emphasize what was done. This is when we use passive voice.
Dr. Julie, can I make a comment that's kind of a question as well to get your feedback or your input on passive voice?
Sure.
My experience was that as a person writing for business, I was told never to use passive voice. I've had to bring it back into my writing for academic writing because it is more common in academic writing. Do you agree with that suggestion that I received so many years ago, that we shouldn't be using passive voice as frequently in professional writing and professional communication overall because of the odd emphasis that it puts on things? Or is that a fallacy that I bought into a long time ago?
And in which context particularly were you told that in business?
Just in general, you know, when you're writing a memo, when you're writing a presentation, when you're writing just anything.
Yeah, Lisa, I would disagree.
Okay.
It's a writer's choice. It's a stylistic choice, and just with the example that I gave about the difference between I cut my hair and I have cut my hair, it's the writer's choice as to what you want to emphasize. So it's a stylistic choice. What do you want to emphasize? Do you want to emphasize the fact that I got a lot of things done today? I got my hair done, I got my nails done, and I bought some new shoes? Or do I want to emphasize, whoa, I was really courageous and I completely changed my style?
I think that the idea was that it was a weaker form of writing, that you're going to have more strength in your writing and your arguments when you're writing in a non-passive voice.
Right. So by using passive voice, what you're doing is you're removing responsibility. You're not taking ownership for it. So you're not standing up for it and saying, I did this, I made this choice, this is my option, this is what I recommend, this is what I would advise that we do. You know, so it definitely changes it takes away the power, but it also takes away the accusation. So if you want to just say, like, the policy here at work is that we behave this way, you know, you don't have an agent. You're not saying the boss says that we must do this. So nobody is held accountable or responsible. So it's a stylistic choice. And I would say that it depends on whether you want to have somebody accountable and responsible for whatever it is that you're writing.
Okay, thank you.
There are moments when it's important to be anonymous, and there are moments when it's important to stand up for for your position and what you're saying. It's kind of interesting because in research in the past, we were always told to always use passive voice, that you should, in scientific writing, you should never say, I, we, our group did this. And then exactly because of what you said, that's kind of changed a little bit, and maybe the last 5 or 10 years, where people are saying, no, you should insert your voice. You should own up to it, to the decisions you made and the findings you found. So it's okay now to use personal pronouns in scientific writing. So just keep that in mind. It's always a personal choice, and it has a slight implication and meaning that's different. And so you as the author should choose what you want to emphasize.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so this is all how to form the passive forms. And then finally, okay, so we talk a little bit about when to use active and passive. So I think we've already pretty much covered this. You know, it has that sense of objectivity if you don't want to give an agent and say who said it and who's taking responsibility. So it's a little bit like less pointing the finger, less taking responsibility. So let me stop there for my part. And then do you want to take a quick break and before we go into the student presentations on chapters 3 and 4? We need to take a quick break. Yeah.
I think someone's waiting to get accepted to the Zoom session.
Okay, awesome. So let's take a little break and I'll let that person in and then we'll just rush to the restroom real quick and come right back. Can we do that instead of milling around for 15 minutes and then maybe we'll end a little bit earlier today?
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So 5 minutes, okay? Okay. So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Okay. God. Okay, are we ready to start again? So let's get in. You ready? Okay, good.
Yeah, do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, please. Can you do so? You know how to do it?
Yep. So let me know if you see it. Everybody's got my PowerPoint?
Yep, I can see it.
Good. So this is chapter 3, and one of the advantages and disadvantages of being first is that you have no idea what is expected. And so I looked at this a couple different ways. One, just reviewing the grammar from this chapter, but also looking at it from a standpoint of, teaching English learners this grammar and how to do it. So that's what I did, and hopefully this is good. Starting with what is an MAV? That's an easier way to say modal auxiliary verbs. Auxiliary is a very difficult word to say, even for a native English speaker. And I think a lot of people don't even know what they are. The word modal, it was helpful for me to think of it as similar to modify, coming from the same Latin word, modus. Modal means to modify. Auxiliary means providing help. So a modal auxiliaries are helping words that modify verbs. Well, how do they modify them, and how can we remember all of the ways that modals modify verbs? There are modals and there are semi-modals. I listed here, and just so, is everybody on? Is everybody good? Can everybody hear me? I feel like I'm talking to no one right now.
I can hear you.
You're good. Okay. Excellent. So there are modals and semi-modals. The modals are can, could, may, might, must, ought to, should, will, and would. For example, she might finish her presentation by midnight. In this sentence, finish is the verb, might is the modal that changes the meaning of finish. A semi-modal is also a phrase, typically with the word to in it, be able to, have to, need to, be supposed to, and had better. As in, she will be able to finish her presentation by midnight. When you add the semi-modal, will be able to, it completely changes the sentence from the one prior to that. You can also combine modals and semi-modals. She might not be able to finish her presentation by midnight. All three of those sentences are completely different because of the modals that were added to them. So what do modals do? This is where the teaching English learner hat in me came on. I like this wonderful little mnemonic, PAN, P-A-N, to remember all of the things that modals can do. And this covers all but 2 of the things in chart 3.1 in our book, starting with the letter P. There are 3 letters in the word pan. The letter P can do 3 different things: possibility, prohibition, and permission. Possibility, underneath the word possibility, I listed all of the modals that can indicate possibility as a modal, as in she might finish her presentation tonight. She can finish her presentation tonight. Those are all possibilities. It can also prohibit something, prohibition. You must not drink alcohol while taking this medication. That's the second P, prohibition. The last one is permission. You can turn in your paper anytime before midnight on Sunday. So all of those are modals that change verbs to create possibility, prohibition, or permission. And you can remember them by remembering there's 3 letters in the word pan, or 3 letters in the word pan, and the first P uses all 3 of them. The second letter is A. Ability and advice are 2 other things that modals can do. The words connected to ability, the modals connected to ability are can, could, and be able to, as in she will be able to finish her presentation tonight. Will be able to creates ability connected to the verb finish. It can also mean advice, should, ought to, had better. You shouldn't drink alcohol while taking this medicine. Medication. Shouldn't is the modal and drink is the verb. Shouldn't changes the word drink to give advice of something that you ought not to or had better not do. The last one, the last letter in pan is N, and there's only one. 3, 2, 1. 1 N, which is necessity. The 2 modals that you can use are have to or have got to. She has to finish her presentation tonight, or you've got to take this medication as prescribed for 10 days. Those are 2 examples of how you can use necessities, use modals to create necessity within your verb. So here's the layout of pan. I also added in there, the book uses logical deduction as another one. I guess if you wanted, you could use paneled. Logical deduction gets a little bit more advanced. So if you're starting with newer learners, pan covers, 90% of them. But logical deduction means, something and a conclusion that you can reach, something that you can deduce based on the information that you've been given. The modals that you can use are must not have, cannot, could not, and could not have. Attaching those to a verb creates a logical deduction, such as Bill Gates must be a generous man. That number cannot be right, based on the information that you have. You can create modals passively by taking the modal plus not, if you want to make it negative, plus the verb to be, plus the past participle, which Dr. Julie reviewed with us. For example, your order should be finished by 5 o'clock. You could put modals into the past by passive modal into the past, modal plus not plus have been plus the past participle. My order should have been finished an hour ago. You can also make it progressive and a passive modal into the progressive. And the book said that this is relatively rare, but I came up with this sentence. I should have been working on my homework this afternoon, but I watched TV instead. And that is actually a true sentence. But that is an example of a passive modal in the progressive form. Any questions? Okay. Here's an activity that we're going to do together. And I'd love it if people got off their unmuted to share things as you think of them. And I would like to apologize. So I've got a little dog here. I've got 2 dogs here, and I gave both of them Kongs in hopes that they would continue eating them during this whole presentation, but we started later than I thought. And you might hear my dog whining or barking in the background. This is an activity. This is a picture describing a situation. When I arrived at school today, there were papers all over the floor in the hall and the director's office. What I'd like all of you to do is use modals to describe what might have happened, what they should do, and what they can do. And you don't have to be realistic. You could say something like, aliens might have landed on the roof. You can say whatever you want. I want to make it fun. And everyone who shares gets added to my little list and gets a treat next week. So who can use a modal to describe any of the events that could have occurred give advice, anything to the people in this school who came into the school and saw this?
The FBI might have been searching for some classified documents that Lisa is harboring,
Trey, you get 2 seconds for that. That
and
was
none of us
fantastic.
knew about this secret life she has.
Good job. Thank you. What else?
As the end of the year is approaching, the principal might have been looking for the last bit of sanity.
Fantastic. That was your Bell?
Yes.
Nice. What else? Chocolate.
She should call Marie Kondo to help her clean it up.
Spark joy. Anybody else? Just 2 chocolates you need? You have a suggestion for what they can do?
There might have been an earthquake last night.
Yes, they might have been up late last night. They
An
should have.
earthquake.
There might have been an earthquake.
Yeah.
Excellent. Who was that? Was that Duong?
Yes.
Okay. When I have it on slideshow, I can't see names. Excellent. You get a chocolate. One more.
They should have the students clean it up.
Excellent. Nice, Jenny. Well, thank you. That is my little activity, one that you can do with your learners. What I was going to do in class was put all of you into groups of 2 or 3 and have you come up with crazy stories and that we share to practice modals. So thank you for that. Here's some possible conclusions that I put up. If the students need some suggestions or ideas, they should call the police. They'd better lock the door at night. Your ideas were much more creative. So thank you. The next thing I want to review with from the chapter related to modals is degree of certainty. And I think that this is actually pretty important because you can have some pretty good misunderstandings if people have different ideas of what degrees of certainty mean. The book says, and I think I pretty much agree, I'd be interested to know if anybody disagrees with what the book said, that if you're 99% positive that something's going to happen, you use would or must. If you're less positive, you use should. I put that at maybe 75%. If it's 50-50, may, might, could, may or might not. 75% certainty that it won't happen, should not. And then if you're very certain, must not, cannot, could not, or would not. If you're going to put that into the past, you use would have, must have, plus the past participle. All of these are using the past participle with pretty much the same words. Would have, should have, may, might, could have, may, might not have, should not have, or must, could, would not have, plus the past participle. So these are some of the examples from one of the exercises in the book. I need a volunteer to do the first one. What degree of certainty does this first sentence have? If you could read the sentence out loud and tell us what degree of certainty you attach to it. Who wants to go first?
Graphic design software.
Trey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Trey.
Sorry. Okay. Graphic design software could help architects create better designs. Could would be 50%. 50-50.
Does everybody agree with that? Yeah. Okay. Next one. Somebody who hasn't talked yet.
I can participate. The size of the file should not make a difference to this computer. 50% maybe? Shouldn't?
Yeah, in the book they have should as more more like 75%. More so in this one it's closer to negative than 50-50.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? I'm with Zaina. I think it's more of a 50-50. Did anyone else have another idea on that one? If it should not make a difference, is it more likely to make a difference or not? Do we agree with the book or do we not agree with the book?
Maybe he's more certain that it's not going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's a risk. It's a risk. The size of the file should not make a difference to this computer, so he's taking a risk. So maybe yes, it's leaning toward the 75% or more. Otherwise, it could be like a risk of ruining the computer or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
agree with
Go
that
ahead.
because the word difference in here, I feel that maybe somebody has tried a situation with that file before. It should not make a difference on a similar computer or a similar situation, so it could bump it up more from the 50% to about 70-75.
In the positive or the negative?
In the positive.
Really? Okay. Because they have it at 75% negative.
Oh,
They
okay.
lean more toward negative. But again, I think that's one of the challenging things of this whole degrees of certainty, because people are going to have different interpretations in their head of what they mean, of what degree that means. So this one I think is open for interpretation. I think also, could you say the size of the file shouldn't make a difference to this computer, but it might. Maybe part of it is in how you say it as well. Or if you say it with confidence, the size of the file should not make a difference. That sounds a little more confident to me. I don't know. But according to the book, it's 75% negative certainty. So let's go on to the next one. Naomi, do you want to guess on the next one?
Sure. Brian must have been a very intelligent person. I guess with the word very, it's pretty positive.
Yeah, must they have 99% positive certainty? Brian is great. So who hasn't talked yet? Who's on to do number 4?
I'll do it.
Oh.
Okay, so those computers files couldn't have caused the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing it's 99% negative.
It is. It is.
I do number 5. The headphones should have been in the computer lab, but no one could find them. Should, so it's the 50-50.
Should is more toward the top, more toward about the 25%. Oh, yeah. They should have been. They were supposed to be there, but we couldn't find them. So that has more positivity than 50-50. So, but again, all of these things I think are open for some interpretation. But the book gives kind of some general ideas. They do the same thing with degrees of necessity, and this will be a similar exercise. And this is all the chart 3-4 that's on page 44 that I've just copied here. Yeah, they're pretty much the same. They use the word obligatory, meaning obligation. It's necessary to do it. You must do it. You need to do it. You're supposed to. Those are all very, very strong, positive. Should, ought to is a little bit less. 50-50, that's where you get your might, could. You don't have to. You're not supposed to. Should not, they bring down a little bit. And then if it's you must not do it, that means there's 100%, 99% obligation to not do something. Again, you can put these in the past using past participles. She was not supposed to have done that. I was supposed to have cooked dinner, but I didn't. So those are all from the past. So again, I've got some of the activities from our book. Somebody who hasn't talked yet. Number 1, find the modal and tell us what degree of necessity is there. Who hasn't gone yet? I can't remember everybody's names. Has Uni, have you gone yet? Okay. All right, well, we'll pick on, how about if we pick on Trey again? Trey's only going to participate.
So I'll do number 1.
Oh, good, okay.
Computer operator are supposed to take good care of their equipment. Who are supposed to is like sure. So I'll put 75% certainty.
Good. So what's the modal in that sentence?
Can you say it again?
What is the modal in that sentence?
It's are supposed to.
And then what's the verb?
The verb that is supposed.
Supposed is the modal.
Take good care of.
Good, good. And how much certainty or how much necessity, how necessary is that?
For
Is
it's
it very
75 necessary?
Yep, correct. They're supposed to. It's important, but it's not 100% critical, but they should. Yeah, good. How about the second one? Anybody?
I think the computer must be kept cool or they will not operate properly. The degree of necessity is high. First of all, because we use must, so it should be high.
So must is the modal, and it's changing what verb?
Be kept.
I think so. How about the next one? Programmers should learn several programming languages. What's the modal?
Should.
And the verb?
Learn.
And what's the necessity of that? How important is it for programmers to learn several programming languages?
It's just 50%.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. A little bit more. It's above. They have might and could as being the 50-50. Programmers could learn several programming languages. That's more 50-50. So if you use should, there's a little bit more necessity in there. How about the last one?
Yeah, right. Like 99%.
Positive or negative?
Yeah, it's positive.
High school for number 4?
Number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on number 4. High school students don't have to carry laptops to school. What's the modal?
The modal is don't have to.
Is it a modal or a semi-modal?
It's modal.
It's a semi-modal. Semi-modals are phrases.
Oh yes, it's a modal. Okay.
Yeah.
The verb is carry.
Correct. And how much strength is, how necessary is that?
It's 99% negative.
Say it again?
It's 99% negative.
If you look at the chart, they said don't have to, just under 50%. So it's not very strong. If they do carry a laptop, it's okay. 99% would be they must not carry laptops to school. Then it would be prohibited. But in this case, it's like, if they do, it's okay, but they don't have to. Any questions on these? All right. So the last thing we're going to go over, and I'm trying hard to, I forgot to set my timer, and I don't have one on my clock. I'm trying to get done in 20 minutes. The last thing is...
You're doing fine.
Oh, thank you.
Don't worry about trying to stress there.
I was more worried about keeping my dogs from barking than checking my time. They're both snoozing at my feet right now. Modals to express doubt, hedging. Who can tell me what hedging means? Ideas, guesses?
Aren't they used to avoid saying something is like definitely for sure?
Yep, that's exactly it. It's a strategy to avoid certainty and to leave room for other contrary opinions. They soften what we say or write, and they make language less direct. And I've seen this a lot, similar to writing in the passive form. I see a lot of this in academic writing as well. So you leave room for other opinions and other ideas. The modals that hedge are can, could, may, might, must, will, would, and should. So here's a sentence. Those plants are dying because they don't get enough sunlight. Is that sentence hedged or not hedged?
Not hedged.
How would I hedge it, Zaina?
I use could or may or might.
Yeah, read the sentence if you were going to hedge the sentence.
Okay, those plants are dying because they they can't get enough sunlight maybe.
Okay, if we're going to hedge, we want to hedge the main verb. What's the main verb?
Dying.
How would we hedge our dying?
Those plants may be dying because they don't get enough sunlight.
Perfect. Yeah, I put they might be dying because they don't get enough sunlight. So Zaina, what you said, you were hedging the other end of it. We want to hedge the main sentence, or the main verb. Excellent. So here's a hedging activity. Again, this is right out of our book, so everybody should have done this. Volunteer to hedge this first sentence using the verb that's in parentheses as your main verb. Urabel, do you want to do this one?
Sure. In fact, some would argue that the study of human-machine interfaces is an entire field in its own right.
Good. Does anybody else have another way to do it? You can say some might. Say it again.
Some might argue.
Yep, perfect. What about number 2?
If today's advancing technology is allowed to entrench such discrepancies, catastrophic consequences can result.
Perfect. Perfect. What did adding can do to your sentence?
It left a chance for somebody to rebuttal or add a different type of result to it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Then the last one has 2. So if you do the last one, you get 2 chocolates next week. And it is Easter next week, so the chocolate is going to be excellent.
The fact that a particular convenience store has sold a high number of winning lottery tickets may not consider, I'm sorry, no.
Think about changing the tense.
Well, actually, let's see, I was thinking, are we allowed to add a B in there? May not be considered significant to someone?
Yeah, read it again. That's what I would do too.
Okay, so may not be considered significant to someone planning to buy a lottery ticket, but the discovery that customers who buy snack food also tend to buy frozen dinners might constitute meaningful information to a grocery store manager.
Chocolate eggs for Trey next week. Yay. Good job. So that's not easy. And, you know, for English learners, this is advanced English. This is hard. So bravo to everybody. That is all I have on modals. If there are questions, we can review them in our groups. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, everybody. Phew.
Oh, great. You did a great job. That was really nice. It was very thorough and very clear and nice examples and good opportunities to practice. And I think you had really good explanations. I think you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about the chapter, or can we move on to the next one? Okay, Trey, you're what?
Hello.
Oops. Okay, so where do I share the screen at?
So in the bottom center, there's a little square in the middle that says share with an arrow that points.
Oh, okay. Is it sharing? Okay, and then let me adjust it. Do I need to move it over, or you guys individually move it? Oh, I need to move it?
Fine. Do you want to put it in presentation mode?
Yeah.
Trey's got video. I didn't turn on my video. Hi, Trey.
Oh no, I'm about to take that off. Hold on.
Pretty slides.
Okay. Okay, but it's not centered for all of you, right? I need to.
I can see it nicely.
I see it fine.
Okay, everyone sees it. Okay. All right, well, hello, everyone. I'm going to present to you noun functions from chapter 4. And when we with this presentation, we'll do an activity on Kahoot. So if you would like to pull up Kahoot on your phone, if you've never played Kahoot before, you can just in your browser, like Google Kahoot, and just click on it. And when we get to that part, we'll continue with the further instructions to start the game and activity. All right, so noun functions. In this lesson, we will cover types of nouns, gerunds, and infinitives as subjects and objects. We will cover complements and appositives. Okay, so to begin with the types of nouns, we have proper nouns and common nouns. Proper nouns should be, the first letter of the proper noun should be capitalized. This, when we're talking about a person's name or a city or something, even in this picture that I place, a Diet Coke is the name of that specific drink, so it's capitalized. Versus if we're just talking about soda, or we're just talking about a park in general, it's a lowercase letter for the beginning letter. But proper nouns are specific names of people, places, and things. And that's the main thing you want to remember, is to capitalize the first letter for proper nouns. But all the other nouns, they're just common nouns. To continue with the types of nouns, we also have counting nouns and non-counting nouns. And one way we can look at the difference of what a count noun is and what a non-count noun is with this picture of milk versus cookies. Cookies, we can count. Specifically here, there are 6 cookies. So I can assign a number or a quantity to the cookies. But for milk, in general, milk you can't count. It's milk. Or sugar, you can't count. It's sugar. Well, now I guess I don't know what you would call it, but if we said 3 cartons of milk, or you're adding extra words to specify to specify that item of milk. But in general, milk you can't count. So this milk will be considered a non-count noun. Okay, it cannot be counted and it's singular. But counting nouns can be singular or plural, as in the case with the cookies. It can be 1 cookie or it can be plural. 3 cookies, 4 cookies, 5 cookies. Also, another type of noun are gerunds and infinitives. For gerunds, we basically are going to add, oh, I can use my cursor. You guys all can see the cursor? You're adding ing to the end of a verb. So if we look down here in the example of the verb run, the verb swim, and the verb think, if we add ing, then you're creating a gerund. Running, swimming, thinking. And remember, this is, once you add ing to the verb, that becomes a gerund, and this is used as a noun. So if you're starting a sentence off saying running every morning, is a good way to start your day. So running in that sentence is used as the subject and is used as the noun. So we change this form from being just a verb as run, but making it running. It becomes a noun, but we call these type of nouns gerunds. So gerunds, ing. Infinitives, you take the word to and add it to the base verb. So in the same example with the word run, an infinitive is to run, swim, to swim, and think, to think. And there were some examples in the book that show how you can use infinitives to where an infinitive can be different parts of a sentence. And actually on another slide, we'll get into some of those specific details. Okay, so now we're going into the section of nouns, gerunds, and infinitives as subjects and objects. A subject is who or what the sentence is about. And the subject is the person, place, or thing or idea that is doing or being something in the sentence. So the subject, the way you determine or identify the subject in a sentence, that subject is a noun that is doing the action. So if you can figure out the verb and then ask, well, who or what is doing this action, that's how you're able to determine the subject. In this example of the alligator, or in this sentence, it says eats cookies and milk. So who or what is eating cookies and milk is the alligator, and that will be the subject. Also, we have direct objects, which are nouns. And the way you're going to find the direct object in a sentence is locating your verb. And when you find your verb, you want to ask the question, will you use the verb in the question to ask what or who? And I can better describe it by looking at this example right here. The sentence says, John took his backpack and books to school. So then we ask to figure out where the direct object is in this sentence. We look at the verb here, took, and say, we ask the question, took what or took who? John took what or John took who? In this sentence, John took what? John took his backpack and books. So there's two direct objects in this sentence. John took his backpack or John took his books. And that's how we locate the direct object. You find the verb, and you can use the subject as well, the subject and verb, and then ask what or who. John took what or John took who? Also in this section of nouns, gerunds, and infinitives as subjects and objects, you have the indirect object. The indirect object, if you're able to identify the direct object, then you can look for an indirect object if it's there. You can look for the indirect object because the direct object kind of connects to that preposition that goes to the indirect object. For example, if we look here in the yellow column here, it defines that an indirect object involves something being done to something else indirectly, and it gives this it gives this, gives this example. Joshua built Emma a fence. In the previous slide, when we were trying to figure out where the direct object is, in this sentence, Joshua built Emma a fence, we'll say Joshua built what? Or Joshua built who? Who is not relevant here, so we'll say Joshua built what? Joshua built a fence. So the fence is the direct object, and who's receiving that direct object? Who's receiving the fence? It's Emma. And that's how we will locate the indirect object. The object of the preposition, prepositions, we think of prepositions as above, in front of. We have some examples here: near, under, around, next to. At the end of a prepositional phrase, you will find an object, and we call this the object of the preposition. Here are some examples: in a house. So that word house is the object of that prepositional phrase. If we look at the example here in the green column, the fisherman fell over the rail. Over the rail will be the preposition, and the last noun that ends that preposition is the word rail, and that is our object of the preposition. To continue in this section with the nouns, gerunds, and infinitives as subjects and objects, we have gerunds, and they are used the same way that nouns are. There's some different uses for gerunds. They could be used as a subject here. Remember, a gerund is like if we take the verb swim, and then we add ing to it, swimming is a gerund. So here, in this example, a gerund can be used as a subject for a sentence. This example says, writing in English is difficult. The verb will be write, but by adding ing, we have writing, and we're using it as a subject. It's beginning the sentence, and it's the noun, and it's our subject. It's doing the action of, or in this case it says is difficult, is. So writing is. Also, a gerund can be used as a direct object. Let's use this example here. I love going out to restaurants. Going is the direct object, and we can identify the direct object by asking that the question before, love what or love who, because love is the verb. So love what or love who? Love going out. That would be our direct object right here. Where's my cursor? So love is the verb, and then by asking that question to figure out what the direct object of a sentence is, use the verb plus what or who. So love what or love who, and this is how we figure out the direct object. And since going is from the verb to go, by adding ing, this is making it a gerund. So these are some examples of how a gerund can be used as a subject or direct object, and there's other examples here as well. How to make it a subject complement, but we're going to explain what a subject complement is next, or in the next few slides. Infinitives, they are used in some of the same ways that nouns are, and they can be subjects and direct objects of certain verbs. So an infinitive always has the word to plus the verb. In this example, in the middle where an infinitive is used as a subject for the sentence, the swimming example, it says to swim in that area may be dangerous. We're using to swim as the subject, and that subject is acting on, on this verb right here, which is be, to be. Okay, now we're going to look at pronouns. Pronouns refer to previously mentioned nouns and gerunds. Previously mentioned, so when you're talking or when you're writing something, after you introduce a person, say, the president, blah, 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 in the next sentence you may say he. So that pronoun is referring to a noun or a gerund that was previously mentioned. Here on the left side of this picture in the blue color are subject pronouns. These pronouns refer to the subject that you would have mentioned previously. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. On the right, in this darker orange color, are object pronouns. And so they replace and refer onto an object. These are some examples, and they're color coordinated to distinguish the difference. They are listening to him. So they, being a subject, are listening, and the same thing, here's our direct object pronoun, him and them in the second sentence. Okay, the next section is complements. An object complement is a noun or adjective that describes the direct object. So if we look at this example sentence right here, the club elected Lisa president. Okay, Lisa is the direct object. We can ask that question again when we use the subject and verb. The club elected what? Or the club elected who? The club elected Lisa. That's our direct object. And then this word president, we're using to help describe the object that was mentioned. So it supports and gives detail and is descriptive of the direct object. So an object complement describes the direct object. And that's how you can correlate these two, because they use the word object. Object complement is going to deal with complementing or describing an object, specifically a direct object. Then I believe the next slide is going to cover what a subject complement is, and to know the difference, object complement describes a direct object. And now, in this case, the subject complement is going to describe the subject. In this sentence right here, he is a good singer. He is our subject, and a good singer is describing our subject. subject complements have, sorry, this should be have. Subject complements have the same meaning as the subject of the sentence when it is a noun, gerund, or infinitive. And the last section we will cover are appositives. And appositives, they're kind of similar to these subject complement and the object complement. Appositives is a noun that you place right next to another noun, and it helps give information about that noun. And a good example would be, I know last quarter in one of our TESOL classes, like writing the research papers, like when you get ready to introduce maybe like some scholar. I think in last week we were talking about in our book, in the Seville Troiki book, it was is it Chomsky? Is that his name? In the yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So say if I was getting ready to introduce this person, and I would say, is that how you pronounce his name? Chomsky?
Chomsky.
Okay, Chomsky. Okay, so I forget his first name, but it's Noam or something like that, right? Noam Chomsky. It'd be like Noam Chomsky, comma, a renowned linguist from wherever he's from, and then you keep on with the rest of the sentence. So it helps give information. And in this cartoon here in the bottom right corner is Brad, the pilot, sneeze. So the pilot is that appositive. It's helping to identify and give more information about the noun, before it. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to play a game on Kahoot. Let's see. Wait, I still have to reshare it again. Okay, hold on. Okay, so I have to stop share and then.
How to log in to play the game?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. All right, so let me see. So what you want to do is, unless you have this app already on your phone, you don't need to download the app. You can specifically, you can just go to Google. You can Google Kahoot. And let me get this open. Okay, so if you go to Kahoot.it, you can type that in your browser, or if you just Google search for Kahoot and you will see it pop up. Yes, and once and once you plug in, once you're on that website, this is the game pin right here. I see many of you are on there, and you probably know, you add in your game pin, you choose a name for yourself, and then we'll be ready to start once everyone is on. Does anyone have, as we just wait a few more seconds for others to log in, does anyone have a question from the presentation?
I have a question about the indirect object.
Okay, so we have 9 players. I think there was a total of like 14. Okay, plus that was one. One was the classroom. So we forget the classroom. One was me. So there should be 12 if everyone is able to log on. Maybe someone is preoccupied, and we're losing people. Okay, and we also can answer any questions when we conclude the game.
Do you hear me? Okay. Hello.
Is it, okay, so I'll wait. I'm sorry. I'll wait 30 more seconds and then we'll start. Thank you for your time. Okay, so we will get ready to start. If you haven't played this game, you'll see a question on your screen, and then you'll have 20 seconds. I believe I set the timer for 20 seconds for each question to select an answer. The answers will be color coordinated and also according to a shape. You'll be able to catch on if you haven't played this before, okay? It's just for fun.
So we will
All right, here we go. Oh.
Hello?
Oh, someone's talking? I'm sorry.
Oh, so we will play on the phone or what?
Yes, okay, so you will look at your screen for the question and it'll show like the answer choices. And then on your phone, I'm sorry, if you logged in on your phone, it's either or. If you logged in on your phone or the computer, then you use either or. I'm sorry, I was hoping you logged in maybe on your phone. Did you do it on your laptop,
Yeah, I know. I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay. That's good. So you'll look at the laptop screen for the questions and answers, and then you'll press, there'll be 4 options for your answer choices. And it's all for fun. Don't worry. You're not getting a grade on this. Unless professor asks me to print the results. Well, I'm just playing. Okay, here we go. Start. Are we waiting for anybody else? We're good? All right, here we go. So, the correct use of proper nouns. Which of these are the correct use of proper nouns? Wow, very good. All right. Those who selected the blue diamond is correct. Uni speaks Vietnamese. We capitalize a person's name plus a language, which are all proper nouns. In the green example, teacher, you would not capitalize. In the yellow example, San Bernardino needs to be capitalized for it to because it's a proper noun. And also in the red, we have to capitalize Lisa. She would be considered a proper noun. All right. So if you haven't played this game before, hopefully you get the idea. The faster you respond, with a correct answer, the more points you get. Okay, and we say, oh my goodness, the professor is in the lead. I don't know if we can negotiate. If anyone beats the professor, do they get like a free homework pass or something?
Absolutely.
Okay. Here we go. All right, Athena, Jenny, good job. Here we go. Now you're going to select a non-count noun. Which of these you cannot be, are not a non-count noun? Is not a non-count noun. Wow, you guys are excellent. Okay, well, I guess I don't have to explain that one. Good job. Oh, and Professor's the lead. Jenny is right up there. Jenny, are you going to doctorate school? Okay.
No.
And Lisa as well. Okay, now you're going to select a count noun. These are nouns that you can count. Okay, so pasta, we can't count pasta, it's just pasta or juice or bread. But apples you can count. We can say there's 2 apples, 3 apples. You can't say there's 3 breads or 3 pastas or 3 juices. I think sometimes in when we talk in speaking English, we make up stuff. So we may put numbers to these things, but the grammar.
Yeah, that was my bad. I
Grammatical,
really dropped my
correct.
phone and it chose pasta.
What would be grammatically correct? A counting noun would be an apple. The other 3 do not. Okay, are not. Okay. Dr. J still in the lead. Lisa and Young is right there trailing behind. Good job. Okay, here we go. Which is not a gerund and an infinitive. Sorry, I forgot that and the article.
Sorry. It's not, but I said, oh no.
Wow, good job, you guys. So this is correct because we would need, for clean to be an infinitive, it would have to be to clean. So we see the pattern here: reasoning to reason, running to run, living to live, cleaning. It should be to clean. So this is the correct answer. That's not an infinitive. Good job. And Dr. J is still in the lead, but Lisa and Young is right behind. And we have 3 players who just hit answer streak. Have on an answer streak of 4 answers correct in a row. So you're going to select the function of the bolded word. Urabel teaches English to 7th graders. What is English in this sentence? Oh, great job. It is a direct object. Urabel teaches what? Or teaches who? So in this case, Urabel teaches English. All right, great job. Dr. J is still in the lead, and we still have Lisa and Young, and all right, you guys are doing good. The same thing, Urabel teaches English to 7th graders. 7th graders, what is 7th graders in this sentence? Great job, it's the indirect object. It's receiving from the direct object, which is English. And the subject is Urabel. And let's see, what else did we put in? Yeah, and then for pronouns, I guess there's yeah. This one there. Oh my goodness, Young is on fire. 6 and all right, good job, Young. Dr. J is still in the lead. Lisa's right behind. You guys are doing good. Okay, here we go. Question 7 of 10. We got three, 4 more questions. She is listening to us. What is us in this sentence? Great job. Is the object pronoun. So those were all those pronouns that are on the right side of that one slide that I was showing. She is listening to us. That is the object pronoun. All right. Let's keep, oh, you're getting close, Lisa. Same thing. She is listening to us. What is she in this sentence? Great job. You guys, all the subjects are easy. Okay. And I think we're about to go into the last question, so get ready. Oh, Lisa, you survived. Unofficially, you get a free pass. It has to be verified by our professor. Okay. Oh, 2 more questions. Select the same thing. Dr. Julie, our professor, is an expert in SLA. An expert would be what in this case?
Oh no, I hit the wrong one.
Good job. A subject complement. It's an expert is it equally means who the subject is, and the subject is Dr. Julie. So Dr. Julie is an expert. That's what a subject complement is. It has the same meaning as the subject. Dr. Julie, an expert. And that's, yeah, appositives are kind of close, but this is a subject complement in this case. All right, here we go. And this is the last question. And sorry if I made up all of these sentences, so I hope not. Maybe some of them could have been incorrect grammatically. Sorry. I hope I did them perfect. But Dr. Julie, our professor, is an expert in SLA. So our professor is being used in what function in this sentence?
Oh, my phone crazy.
That's great. It's being used as a positive here. At least I think so. I hope I did it right. I'm pretty sure I hope Dr. J might be critically analyzing my sentences. But this a positive, Dr. Julie, I guess I put our professor, or I could say a professor at Cal State San Bernardino. So it is describing the noun that was right before it, which is Dr. Julie. Great job. And the results are in, and we have at 11,938 points, Lisa. In second place, we have Uni, who came back from 4th place and made it to 2nd place. She gets the silver. And then we have Dr. J coming in 3rd place. Great job, everyone. Great job, TESOL class. Well, that concludes my presentation and activity. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, or if I wrote some of those sentences wrong, I'm sorry.
You did an awesome job. It was perfect. You did great. I love the slides. You did a wonderful job. It was very clear. Your slides were absolutely beautiful. Your explanation was really nice. The game was super fun. It was really good. You did a great job. Does anybody have any? Yeah, awesome job. Does anybody have any questions for him or questions on the chapter?